welcome back to Gotta Be Me podcast. We're so happy to be here again with you today. We are your hosts. My name is Sophia Benyon, and this is my cousin, Peyton Benyon.
Welcome back to our channel, everybody. If you are new here, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much.
We are so excited today because we are doing our first interview. We're having other guests on our show, which is what we always wanted to get to eventually. We're very excited, and we have two of the most special guests we could ever ask for on our show. We brought our moms on. On the left is my mom. Her name is Sarah Benyon. And I personally believe that she is one of the most wise and beautiful and caring people in the whole entire world. Meet my mom.
And this is my mom. Her name is Stacy Benyon. I also believe that she's very wise, intelligent, and caring as well. But anyways, we're so glad to be able to bring them on here and allow them to be our first experiment. They agreed to come. You know, moms always come through for you, so we're glad about that.
So we'll see how this goes, but we want to ask them some questions. We want to ask them what it was like raising us, but we want to get some background first. So we're just going to get right into the questions today. I'll start with my own mom. Mom, what kind of setting did you grow up in? And what was your diversity experience? Was it a very diverse place? And just kind of what was it like?
Well, I was born and raised in Joliet, Illinois, which is about 50 miles outside of Chicago, southwest.
Close to a big town.
Not super close. We sometimes had experiences going into the city, but we weren't just there all the time. Mm-hmm. And there is diversity in Joliet back then, and I haven't been back very much since then, but it was kind of segregated.
Really?
Once I got to kindergarten, which was in 1979, I went to school on the east side of town, which is where more of the ethnic diversity was located.
Didn't you tell me one time that was on purpose, like your mom?
Yeah, she had us bused over there. I guess my parents jointly decided because it was a magnet school, and it was called individual education, and it was kind of a unique educational philosophy. And it really appealed to their mind frame. They were kind of, hippies, social activists somewhat from the 1960s, and had very liberal ideas, or I don't know about very, but they were liberal and progressive, and liked the idea of a new type of educational philosophy. So we were in school with a diverse group of children from kindergarten on.
So there was a school closer to you all.
Oh, yes.
But they decided, no, we want the more diverse school.
Right, and it was a long bus ride.
That's a great advantage, right? That your parents kind of put you
in
that situation.
It was, and we didn't realize it, but I think they did. I think they knew that it would be an excellent experience for us.
I can see how that would definitely be true. How about you, Aunt Stacy? How did you kind of...
So I definitely have a different experience. So I grew up about 3.5 hours south of Chicago in a little farm community.
What? Farm girl?
I'm a farm girl, grew up on the farm.
Check it out.
And so the town closest to me, I grew up on the farm. Literally, my dad is a farmer.
Really?
He's a retired farmer. And grew up in near a very small town. Population 60 people when I was there. I checked the population recently, and it's down to 30.
No way.
Yeah, people are moving away in droves. Yeah,
in droves. So, 30 of them.
Yeah, all 30 of them have left or
Crazy.
Passed away. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's an older community, but the school that I went to was 100% white.
Really?
So it was 3 towns in the area that went to the same school district, and in my junior high and high school, it would have been 120 students, 7th through 12th grade.
Whoa!
And every single one of them was farm community, white. I guess the diversity would have come in more so, like my mom worked at the local university, which was a half hour away.
Okay.
And it was a bigger university, Western Illinois University, and she worked in the sports department. And so all the coaches and the athletes, I interacted with them basically my whole life. So that's where...
From your mom's...
From my mom's,
where your mom worked. Okay.
Where she worked. So in high school, I mean, we would have like a foreign exchange student every once in a while.
That poor student must have felt very
But that was
strange.
it. That was totally
So
it. But growing up, I did a lot of sports, and like in the sports, I would go to a higher level, and so I would have to go to bigger cities to compete.
Oh, so then you had exposure that way.
Yeah, so I would play basketball.
What's your biggest sports accomplishment? How high did
So
you jump? Remember you had the record?
Oh, yeah. So in 8th grade, I won state in 7th and 8th grade. I won the high jump in 7th and 8th grade. And so I held the state record in 8th grade for probably about 20 years.
That deserves a round of applause.
In 8th grade, I jumped it was either 5'4" or 5'5". I think it was 5'5".
Okay,
and then,
well, my whole life I imagined it was 5'8".
That was my college, that was more so my college jump.
Okay.
So I got a scholarship to run track in college. But yeah, that record finally got broken, and my mom was actually there to see it. It was hilarious. Yeah. So my niece was actually running at the state track meet, and my mom always, every year, she would get the program and make sure nobody broke my record.
Really?
She ordered the program every year.
Yeah.
My mom was the best sports mom ever. She traveled everywhere. And so she would get the program. And one year she saw that a girl was getting close to it because you could see what they jumped before they got there. And she was there to watch my niece run track. And she was trying to break my record. And my mom went down and met her parents. And then she called me crying. She called me crying. I think I was married with 3 children. And she called me crying. It was 20 years later, and I thought something serious had happened, right?
Yeah.
And so she told me somebody broke my record, and I just started laughing. But she was super excited because the family was really nice. And
that's great that she's so engaged. Mom, I know you were never as competitive as Stacy, but you were into sports some, right?
Mm-hmm.
What'd you play?
First soccer, and then softball a little bit, but just slow pitch in the police athletic league. And that was not super competitive, but I thought it was at the time. And then basketball, which became my great love.
Was that your favorite
Yeah,
basketball?
probably.
My mom is 5'2", y'all.
5'1".
5'1".
Maybe still, if I haven't shrunk yet.
But she can shoot for real.
Not anymore.
No?
No.
You haven't done it in a while.
we should go out and play.
Oh, yeah.
No?
And Stacy be dunking on you for sure.
I'm telling you,
We're on the same team.
Yeah, right.
5'10" or something.
I'm 5'10".
5'10".
Shrinking to 5'9", I think.
Now you see where me and Sophia get it from.
The height difference. It's the mom's fault.
It's the mom.
It's my fault. You're
So,
short.
whenever so I'm assuming then because you kind of grew up with a diverse experience, you had a lot of, like your friend group was diverse as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. How did you meet Dad? How did you know Dad was the one out of?
Oh, you made a leap. So I didn't meet him until college.
Okay.
How did I know he was the one? I don't know. He just was smart and handsome and athletic. And actually, I really thought that he wouldn't be interested in me because he was really talented. And
Well, we're gonna have to get him on the show to hear how he
yeah,
feels
it's an
about
embarrassing story. So, and so I'm not being entirely candid.
How about you and Stacy? Like, so you kind of grew up in a very one culture,
Sheltered.
but then you had some exposure. So, I mean, how did you go from an all-white town to like being married to Uncle Byron?
I guess I just growing up, I grew up super naive, so I never really paid attention to the difference. My parents never really said anything that made me think
Really?
think anything bad.
And you either, right, Mom?
No, definitely not in my family.
Which is so interesting because you all basically had these, or my mom was just saying she had this experience where she didn't really have to think about it, and then she has these children who are forced to face the fact of being Black every day, are forced to deal with the prejudices and think about it because you have two different sides of the family.
Well, they were actually raised in a less diverse community than I was.
And sometimes we really want to get into that ourselves. Like, it's really interesting how you grew up diverse and you had exposure, but we kind of grew up in, at least for times, where we were kind of only Black or mixed ethnic family in the area. So yeah, our childhoods were kind
Not for lack of a desire for there to
Of
be more
course not.
diversity where we were.
It was just where we happened to be at the time.
And we actually chose where we were going to raise our family based on diversity.
Right.
Like, Uncle Byron and I talked about it. We're like, we want our children to grow up in a diverse neighborhood, in a diverse area, where, like, when he actually proposed or asked my father for permission to propose, my father actually asked, like, what are you going to do if, when you have children? And Uncle Byron's answer was, well, we're not going to raise them here, which would have been in the country in an all-white country setting. And that was a conscious decision not to do that, because we knew our children would face like different situation than obviously I grew up, and we didn't want it to be in that setting.
So have you like ever, now since you've married Uncle Byron and had mixed ethnicity, your children are of mixed ethnicity.
That's hard to say.
Tripping on those words. Have you ever experienced people making strange comments or being rude or?
Yeah, people ask the goofiest questions sometimes. And growing up,
Probably out of ignorance, right?
It is. I don't think they're trying to be mean, but growing up, I never thought you had to look like your parents, because in all honesty, both my parents have dark hair and dark eyes.
Right, and you don't look like your parents or your siblings.
So I don't look like my parents or my siblings, but the thing is, nobody ever questioned if they were my parents. So when I had Peyton's my oldest, and when I had my daughter, she doesn't necessarily look like me in all ways, although
she always tries to claim that I do.
I will say I do have a picture of us side by side on my phone, and she looks just like me.
Maybe we can put it up.
Yeah. So I actually took pictures of all my children, put them side by side. They all look a little bit like me.
They all have something, right?
Yeah, but I never thought you had to look like your parents. But then when people questioned, like I literally had somebody ask where Peyton's mom was, because clearly I couldn't be her mom. And I mean, I could have taken that and been offended, but I just took it as like super ignorant.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You need
You're
a
so
biology class.
Yeah. A little big B, little B.
How about you, Mom? Was it different the first time once my hair started getting long and you tried to?
Well, I was never much into doing my own hair growing up. I wore it
You
short.
were a tomboy when you were younger.
So was I.
So
were
it was
tomboy
a
too.
whole
It
new
looks tomboy.
experience all around doing hair, braiding hair. So, and
Was that the first time you learned how to braid hair?
yeah, and I started learning how to
That's
French
funny.
braid hair, and I was
No wonder I
you know,
looked like
trying to-
that when I was.
Oh, come on. She did a good job.
I guess
Don't
we're
even
going to be
start.
showing a picture of her too.
I'm teasing.
So there is a picture. Camille was a
Where
baby,
her
so you
braids
were
are
just a little
sticking out
over.
at weird
I
angles.
have like a.
Not so much that,
Okay.
but she had a front ponytail
Yeah, like.
that just kind of stuck
That's
up like a
great.
fountain.
Yeah, it looks
Kinda
like
arched
it's there
over
for
and
no
just-
good reason.
It was
No
cute.
good reason, but
You know what?
it
She
had to
was a
be
cute
kind of
baby.
gathered in and controlled in some way so that it just wasn't out like that. And I didn't know how to do side braids or anything like that. And I'm not good with fine motor to this day.
I
So
feel like
it
I
was-
remember you experimenting with lots of different hair lotions too.
I'm sure we did.
To this day, I do that. Like I feel like it's just a
My
part of the
mom
black
always
girl
said
experience.
we had a hair graveyard. Nope,
Hair
this
product
didn't
graveyard.
work.
Tried that.
Put it back.
Sure. Or
Next.
offer it to a friend or a niece or anybody. When Peyton was born, it was funny because she had completely straight hair when she
Did
was
she have
born.
a lot of hair when she was born?
She had a good amount of hair, but she didn't get her first, like, when she turned 6 months, she got a little flip. And I'm like, oh, how cute.
Oh,
She's
she's
going to
gonna
have
be curly.
curls. And then by the time, and it was so funny because Grandmama, my mother-in-law, hadn't seen her for a while. And when she turned 1, I called Grandmama and I'm like, what should I put in it? It's getting curly and, it's getting, I need some product, right? And so I was asking for advice and she's like, oh, I'm sure it's fine.
She didn't believe you about how curly it was getting?
No, and it got super curly by the time. She had a cute afro, but I didn't really know what to do with it and what to put in it. So, a little bit of water and a little bit of whatever you find at Walmart type of thing. And then when Grandmama finally saw it, she's like, okay, let's go to the store.
That's cute.
And you see it now, it's 4C all the way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you gotta-
Somehow you ended
gotta
up with
fro.
the really curly hair, and mine's like curly, but not nearly as curly as yours. I don't know what mine would be.
Maybe 3C, something like that.
She got my super thick and his super curl.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I wonder if your dad's hair somehow ended up being curlier than my dad's hair.
I do not know.
No, Dad's got really curly hair,
His hair is
but it's
curly, right?
thin.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you got thinner hair.
Yeah.
Maybe if it was more dense, then
It'd
it would
be a little
yeah.
more curly. or
And even
something.
my boys have curlier hair than like your boys.
both of them, right?
Well, Jesse and Ezra are
Like
pretty
are
curly.
kind of
Isaac-
like Titus. Jesse and
Yeah,
Ezra
yeah.
are Titus, but then Isaac has a whole afro.
Isaac has an afro.
a golden afro.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
beautiful.
With blue eyes, too.
Jesse's
Both of
is
my
getting
brothers
more
have
like
blue eyes.
that, isn't it?
You think?
I don't know.
His is reddish. Jesse's is reddish.
I'm not talking about the color. I'm just saying tighter.
Tighter curls.
Tighter curls, yeah.
It's always interesting how different the children can turn out whenever you have mixed ethnicities. The parents look very different from each other.
Actually, if you would see a picture of Uncle Byron next to Peyton, they would be very similar skin tones, especially. And then the boys more would be my skin tone. Like and so we don't have much in the middle, but we have both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. It's just kind of, and then mom, people get confused about you. I have people asking me all the time, is your mom, and they don't want to say it wrong. Where? What is your mom? Is she from? And they don't know how to ask it. Remember, one of my friends that I grew up with was like, found out recently that my mom was, what would be considered white, and they're like, oh, no way, I always thought she was black. That was funny. I don't know where you got that, but.
Well, I take it for a compliment for sure, and don't see what they see.
Do you think it's the Jewish in you, maybe?
I think it's the olive skin tone, and just kind of like unidentifiable.
And you have really
somewhere...
dark hair and dark eyes, and.
Well, yeah, except my hair's not dark.
Well, not anymore.
But I don't know. But I do get that question directly too.
You probably never get that question, Stacey.
What are you?
Probably asks you if you're black or anything.
They don't. Although I did have somebody, they kind of stumped themselves and asked if my mom was black.
No, Why did they ask that?
We don't know
why.
We don't know.
That's very
well, because
confusing.
they saw my children.
So then they were like, "It's your
Did you
mom."
see my dad.
I think they stopped themselves mid-question, but I knew that's where they were going. It was so funny. Yeah.
So the last question I kind of want to ask y'all about was, so y'all grew up, you wouldn't have considered yourself a Christian, as a young person, right? And would you have either?
Technically, I probably would have.
Okay.
Just out of not knowing. We went, so it was so funny because we would attend services, not regularly, but every once in a while we'd go to the Scioto Christian Church.
Okay.
And so people would ask, what religion I was. And I said I was a Christian. And they're like, what kind? I'm like, the Christian kind. Because you know how like there's denominations or whatever, but we literally went to the Christian
church.
And so when they asked what denomination, I would just say Christian. And they're like, oh, never mind. Like,
you don't know.
You don't know. But that's just what it was.
So kind of my last question for both of y'all is like, what has it been like to become a Christian? And you can answer it in your own way, but kind of some things I'd like to just throw out there is, how did your upbringing affect your Christianity experience? How did your marriages affect your Christianity experience? And, even like nobody's perfect, right? And you've probably had some different experiences being a Christian than maybe others have just because of who you're married to and who your children are and things like that. So,
well, I think I was raised with politics more as a religion, I think, than actual church going. We went to a Unitarian place when I was very young, and I'm sure that a lot of those values were instilled in me pretty strongly. I don't remember just, outright messages or specifics about the doctrine or anything like that. I think it's kind of a wide open doctrine anyways, and that's probably why I don't remember. But it's Universalist or Unitarian or both, and I'm not sure which one's supposed to go in front of the other. Sometimes I've heard it one way and sometimes the other way. But the teaching, which maybe most of the viewers would already know, is that all religions basically are worshiping the same God, just under a different name and with different set of cultural values. And it all gets you to the same place, really. And like I said, my parents got divorced when I was, in 6th grade or so. My dad wasn't in the picture as much. I still saw him. He still was a big part of my life, but my mom was really influential when it came to, political views. And so I was more articulate about that kind of thing and, what Democrats stood for versus what Republicans stood for all that time than I was at all literate or knowledgeable about the Bible or Christianity. I have a couple of stories about religion, I guess, from when I was fairly young. One is from, I think, maybe around 1st grade when I was eating my regular, back then bagels weren't as big as they've gotten since then. Like, they've come in and out, and they're gone again, but they were not known of when I was in 1st grade.
It was a Jewish thing, huh?
It was, yeah. And I always had one in my lunch, a bagel sandwich. And so one of my classmates asked me one day if I was Jewish, and I didn't really know what that meant, so I had to go home and ask my mom. And she said, "Yeah, you are Jewish, and we're Jewish. Bubba's a Jew, and I'm a Jew. That means you're Jews, you and your brother." And I said, "Oh, so what is that? What does that mean?" And she said, "Well, that means that we're God's chosen people." And I was like, "This is major news. Like, this is really important. Like, we're chosen, and we didn't, like, do or say anything in particular. We're just the chosen people." So that, I don't know what I thought about that at that age, but of course I've had thoughts about it since then. And then again later on in, I think 4th or 5th grade, I went with a friend to, I'm guessing in my memory that it was a Baptist church, and I heard my first hell and brimfire, what is it, brimstone and hellfire message. I had never heard anything like that about how if you're not a Christian, you're going to hell. And so my question now for my mom was, are we Christians? And
are we Jewish?
and she said, "Well, yeah, we're Christians. We celebrate Christmas." So, to her, that's what that meant, was that we're Christians. And at that time, I don't think that it really had that much more significance in her mind, although she had a pretty significant religious experience as a child because, just because of her upbringing and the way things were. Her mother was a Jew, her father was a fallen away Catholic, is how my grandmother always described him. And neither of them went to church or synagogue, but my mom and her sister were there, and the parents knew that they needed some kind of religious influence, so they let them walk to the Lutheran church up the block by themselves every Sunday for Sunday school, and I don't know. So they learned a lot of Christian doctrine early on, but my mom thought there was something really wrong with the teaching that a baby that dies won't go to heaven unless it's been baptized. So she kind of rejected it from an early age. So I think a lot of that came across in her parenting of us, was like, there's things about Christianity that just aren't right, and we're not going to go along with all that.
And would you say your mom was still right about some of those things? Like, even to this day, now that you have an understanding of what real Christianity was, you look back and you can kind of say,
I can see why she rejected it. Yeah.
So how did you come to true Christianity, kind of like just in short?
I'm sorry, I don't tell short stories. I only know the long format, but through my husband. And he had a very different upbringing than I did, and that's maybe the biggest thing. Not so much that he's black and I'm white. That was not a big obstacle for us to get over, because we had culture, not family, but just school experiences,
right?
And the people we were around, the
generational,
things that we,
right?
Yeah, but his religious upbringing was vastly different from mine. And that showed up very early on in our marriage, like almost on day 2, or maybe literally day 4 or something like that. And so he started going to church very regularly, services. And I went with him at some point toward the beginning, but I was like, oh no, that's not for me. I'm just not going to go. And so then I didn't for quite a while. But then after you were born, he wanted to take you to service, and that was a point of contention, because I wanted to spend my Sunday evenings with you, because I worked on Sunday during the day, and so I had to start coming to services because he had you there with him in the evening on Sundays. So then I was exposed to
a little bit forced,
a lot more doctrine than what I had ever known about before at that time. Yes.
And so eventually you came around, or you decided it was good after all? Was a good idea?
Yeah, it took some time and a lot of differences in our marriage, and some emotional things, and some, I don't know, having a child. Of course, you probably hear it from every mother that's ever been a mother, that it changes you fundamentally. It makes you think about what's really important in life, right, and what the purpose of all this is, and what you need to do and be as a mother to give your child the best.
Right.
And so that had a large part to play, and I was actually expecting my second daughter when I made a religious conversion, because, things had just been working on me, spiritual truths that I couldn't get away from.
So how long have you and Dad been married now?
26 years.
That deserves a round of applause.
Oh, thank you.
How about you, Aunt Stacy? What was your kind of religious and then Christian experience like?
So growing up, my grandma was a big part of our life, and she went to the local Christian church. So my mom would always take us, which my grandma was actually my dad's mom.
Okay.
My dad was, he always said, you don't have to go to a building to be a Christian. And so he took that literally and never went to the building.
Never went to the building.
I think I remember seeing my dad in...
Same generation as my mom.
Yeah, well, he was in the Navy, and I don't know, maybe had a bad experience at some point. And so he didn't really go, but he held a high moral standard.
Really?
He just said that you don't have to be in a building to know God.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
that's
but it wasn't
true,
super, right? my upbringing, I wouldn't say it was super religious, but we would go, like my mom would take us to, Bible camps in the summer or church camps in the summer. We'd go to, vacation Bible school, and we would do all those things. And we would go, go to church with my grandma, and we'd go with my mom to the local Christian church. And then my brother and I actually got baptized in that church. I want to say he was maybe 17 and I was 15, but I didn't really have a whole lot of understanding. I just knew...
Felt like you should?
Yeah, well, I should, and I knew I wanted to be a Christian. I just didn't know the right way to do it. I didn't have a whole lot of exposure to doctrine or anything like that. It was just, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention growing up. I just did it
just
because...
kinda living,
I was just kind of doing it. And then when I went away to college, I kind of veered away from it quite a bit. And then, I would try to find my way back out of guilt. It was kind of just this yo-yo thing. And then I would put it on the shelf for a while. And then, like your mom said, actually when I got married, we actually were expecting our first child shortly after we got married. So we got pregnant basically right away. And so we were older when we got married. So we thought, we should start a family.
How long have y'all been married?
We've been married 20 years.
Oh, you're right behind. You're just a few years behind.
20 years. And so we actually celebrated our first anniversary with a 1-month-old.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So when we got married and found out we were expecting our first child, I told my husband, and he wasn't a Christian at the time, although he grew up with a background much more Christian background than I did probably. Right. I told him that I wanted to raise our children in church.
Really?
Yeah. So I actually, so he's a school teacher, and so he looked around the school to look for the best Christian children, and we decided to go to that church. And we went to that church, and we went there and finally we went to a couple of different churches, and then found the one that we liked, and so that's the one that we were attending. When our first 2 children were born. So Peyton and Titus were born. And then...
So what happened that you thought, no, not this, something else?
What did happen? That's kind of a long story.
That is, right? I don't know. I'm not trying to make it too long. But you were considering yourselves Christians and attending a Christian church. So why did it become were you a true Christian at the time?
I guess I would say based on the knowledge that I had, I was doing the best I knew how.
Right.
In some ways, I was doing the best I knew how. And, at some point, that's what God requires of you, right?
Absolutely.
But then the more I got around the Binion family, I saw kind of a different side of things. And I saw a joy in Christianity that I hadn't really seen before.
Okay.
And I wanted that for me, and I wanted that for my family. So I went that direction. Actually, Uncle Byron and I became Christians. We actually got saved on the same day.
Really?
Yeah, got saved on the same day at the same service. Yeah, so it was good. Peyton was 4, and I think Titus was just a tiny baby.
I mean, I remember the wedding, but it's not very clear in my memory.
Yeah.
It was a very family affair.
It was a very family affair. It was, Uncle Monkle's wedding. So, yeah.
That's amazing.
The day after, right?
Yeah, that weekend.
He was like, okay, Christianity is got to be funner than this.
Yeah, just that no matter what happens in your life, there's an underlying joy. And I saw that in the Binion family. And I'm like, okay, something, like there's something there.
What do they have that
What
I
do they
don't?
have that I'm missing? Like there was a void. There was a void. I was trying to fill it with, different things in life that, perhaps, you could try to fill it with a husband or family or children or, hobbies or whatever. But I really was just missing like God in a real sense in my life.
I said that was going to be the last question, but I do want to ask one more question for both of you. When you met our dads, when you were like our age, college age, so that would have been maybe a little before you met our dads, but when you were in that age, what was your favorite genre of music?
Right at that time?
What did you listen to the most?
Well, we were listening to the D'Angelo Brown Sugar album.
That was the one.
That's not a genre, I know. That's a specific artist, but
Specifics are great.
that was the main thing that we were listening to when we met.
So was R&B like your favorite?
It had been. I went through phases then in college where
Right.
I listened to some other genres, but
Were you
up
ever into
until
hip hop?
college, yes, I was into hip hop.
I would have been listening to a lot of R&B, and then Uncle Byron would have been big time hip hop.
Okay.
Boys to Men, huh?
Oh, totally.
Me and
that
Mom
your
would
group?
jam to some Boys and Men.
Yeah, Boys to Men was where it's at. Boys to Men, different things like that. I liked the older music too. Some Luther.
Oh,
and,
okay. Not
like,
too old.
No, not too old. Yeah, but I like the older.
I like Luther myself.
Yeah,
Never
stuff like
Too
that.
Much has got to be one of my favorite songs ever.
Classic. Yeah, so I was into some of that. So I would kind of go back and forth between the R&B and the old stuff.
So if we get Mom to rap, will you sing?
I'm not a singer.
Come on.
You know this.
Just for fun.
I am not a singer. That would not be fun. That would be torture for all those involved.
Well, it's been so wonderful to have our moms on the show with us today. We loved having them. We loved hearing stories, old and new. We hope you all enjoyed it too. You know what time it is.
Peace, love, and hair grease.